Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Jonas Siegel of The Athletic. Nick Foligno will join us here in a few moments. Former Leaf. One of the very few Maple Leafs in history that never played in front of Leaf fans.
Good. That's a good trivia question.
That will be trivia. That COVID season, there is so much trivia from that COVID year.
I like that.
Like Foligno, he really got jobbed. Like the whole world got jobbed, clearly. I mean, it was a pandemic and there was a lot of crazy stuff going on. But he comes back, he's wearing his dad's hat, he's got the jacket, everyone's jacked up, and no one can go see him play.
Yeah.
And no one, like, would anyone have bought a Foligno jersey during COVID? Like they would have if the world was just in a regular state and Foligno got acquired at the deadline, there would be dozens of Foligno jerseys sold for sure because people were jacked that, he's a good guy, he had the style of play, very blue collar, people like that up here. His dad played here. The story's really cool, kind of like Max Domi.
Yeah.
Although Mike Foligno is not the equivalent of Ty Domi, but still, good Leaf, especially those early 90s team that are beloved. But I wonder if anyone bought a Foligno jersey if you could never wear it and you couldn't go anywhere.
Maybe his family? For sure, right?
Maybe. That sucks, though.
Yeah, it was not fun.
No. I guess Game 7 against Montreal, they let like
500
people in.
Yeah.
So 500 people got to see Nick Foligno as a Leaf.
I did, too.
And you were in the building.
Yeah.
How many media were allowed in?
Wasn't a lot. I think it was like under 20.
Were you a pool reporter? Did you have to give access to other people that weren't allowed in information or?
No, because remember, I think it was still on Zoom at that point. So like you didn't actually interact with the players personally. You did it on screen.
So what was the benefit of you being there? You got to see different angles.
You can see the game differently watching it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But you didn't get like up close and personal information.
No.
That would have been wild. Yeah, I don't remember us, like we were never going to go down there, clearly. We didn't request trying to get in. I'm sure, I'm guessing Masters was down there. No, it would have been really
I imagine like we can ask him to relive those great days, but it was terrible to be in the building.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was helpful for work purposes.
Right.
It was like soul-sucking.
But depressing.
Depressing.
Yeah.
So depressing.
Like being in a massive building like that with no one in there.
Well, so
watching
let me
a
ask
game
you this,
that matters.
Because the Lakers won the NBA title during the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Would it have meant anything to you, like if you couldn't experience it like that? Like, let's say the Leafs had won that year and Foligno wins a cup and all that stuff. There's like no one in the building.
No, it would have been.
Wouldn't it have like kind of sucked for fans?
It would have been so typically Leafy if they won it that year.
Yeah.
Right? You build up for so long, you're anticipating, parading. The joke has been around for 50 years.
Yeah.
And you literally can't have a parade and no one's in the building.
Bettman hands the trophy to Tavares and he walks around and there's no crowd.
Like, I'm sure Tampa looks back on it now saying it was great because they won it again the next year.
Yeah.
So the next year they got the real deal experience, right? They got everyone in the building. Buildings were packed around the league by that point. But if it's a one-off and it's such a build-up and you do it in front of nobody, and at no point can you interact with anybody, like there's no parade, there's no anything.
I don't even think
that would have sucked.
Did Tampa have a parade that year?
I think they did the boat parade like the Buccaneers.
Oh yeah.
Remember
that was the Brady.
Yes.
Shuffling onto the boat.
Yes, and I think Tampa did the same thing. They had jet skis out, they had boats out, yachts out.
Because I don't think the Lakers had a parade.
I don't. That's a good question. I don't know.
I don't think they did.
Like, did they have one, like a retroactive parade? Did they have
one? Have one a year later?
I
don't think you can do that.
I'm not sure I don't think they did. Yeah, it's a good point because the Lakers have had so much success too.
Yeah.
Because it was like a psychological buildup where you had to force yourself into believing that it really meant the same, right? Like I remember going through that, and we were still doing the show. And we were teeing up the games as if, it was any other game, any other world, reacting to them in the same way. But there was always a part of you that was a little bit empty. Like you understood it just wasn't the same thing. Right? And it was very artificial. Like especially the true bubble year. Like the next one against the Habs, which is what we're talking about when Foligno was here, that was different because they had played a full season and we were kind of acclimated to the world of COVID at that point. That first series against Columbus was so strange. Like the real bubble where they went in and weren't allowed out.
I don't even think I was allowed in for that.
I don't think anybody was.
Nobody was allowed.
No, I don't believe there was any media except for the media calling the game. And they weren't allowed anywhere close to the ice. But they had to go into the bubble too. Gord Miller went in for NBC. He was in there for, I think, 60 days. He had to go from the Royal York right across the street to Scotiabank Arena. You look back on it now, you're like, what the hell were we doing? But in 2020, people were freaking out, myself included. No one knew what the hell was happening.
You got to ask Nick his favorite bubble memory.
Well, he would have been in there with Columbus, I guess.
Yeah, the team that beat
the Leafs, yeah. And then the next year, like we were saying, he shows up to Toronto, and it's a trivia question. He was a Leaf, but no one could go to the building to watch him play. It's wild. Here is a longtime NHLer, former Leaf, now current Chicago Blackhawk, one of our favorites on this show, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Here's Nick Foligno. How you doing, Nick?
Very well, guys. How you doing? That bubble talk got me, got nightmares.
Oh, man.
Started shivering thinking about it.
I know. I don't even know how it came up, but I guess we were teasing that you were coming on, and I was saying how, like, you're a trivia question where you're one of the very few Leafs that played in Toronto, and no one got to see you live.
Yeah, that was disappointing in a lot of ways. Obviously, the whole getting injured, but I haven't said that. I said I don't even really feel like I got the real experience of playing as a Toronto Maple Leaf because there was absolutely no fans. You couldn't even go out in town.
Right.
It was too bad because it was obviously a dream come true at the time, and then just things fell apart from there. But I still have good memories. I really enjoyed the group, and it's too bad the way things ended.
Yeah. That bubble was wild, man, because the year before, like, that was a true bubble, right? Like, you guys went in and you weren't allowed to leave.
I actually can't believe that we did that. I still, it blows me away. That's something I definitely will be telling grandkids down the road. Like, I actually played hockey in a bubble. I guarantee you they won't believe it. And I just remember, we're kind of, it's stupid. You're kind of excited at first because you don't know how this is all going to go. And I don't want to, well, I'm going to say it now to hell with it. But what they promised us and what was delivered was two completely different things. We were told there were going to be shops and restaurants to sit out, and there was none of that. It was pretty funny, but you know what? They did a hell of a job considering, and we were able to crown a Stanley Cup champion. But it was not something I ever want to do again. That's for sure.
So was that the city of Toronto or the Canadian government that pulled the chute on that, or the NHL finally got you in there and said, sorry, guys, we just don't have any of this available for you? Who pulled the pin on all those promises?
Yeah, I think it was what we should know from the NHL and some other things. There's a lot of empty promises sometimes. But no, you know what? I mean, my God, who had the blueprint on how to navigate a pandemic at the time? Right. So as much as you want to be mad, I mean, I think we were just glad that we were playing hockey the way the season ended so abruptly, but it was, I remember the first time you ate the one restaurant. I remember we stayed at the Royal York, which felt like a prison. I see it now, and I actually can't even. I will never step foot in that place again. Especially because those window wells were thick too.
Yeah.
The other guys were at that other hotel. Is it Hotel
X?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful. They got tons of sunlight. They're out near the soccer stadium, and life's just. It looked like they were they all had tans. We're in this big cement block of a building, and I just remember that. But I remember eating at that restaurant. I was like, oh, this food's pretty darn good. They have that steakhouse that's there. And then by the fourth day of eating at fifth day by the same restaurant, you're like, get me out of this place. You're complaining about eating a steak, but you're like, I can't eat this again. So it was crazy.
Were you texting buddies in Edmonton asking what was going on out there?
Oh yeah. Well, my brother said they didn't even see the sun. He said they had a tunnel under, it was all covered. At least we got outside. He's like, we didn't even get outside. It was crazy.
Wow.
So he said that experience was insane in itself. And if I'm not mistaken, did they move to Edmonton or did they move to Toronto to finish the series? How did that all work?
They finished in Edmonton, I think, the Cup. Oh, no, it came to Toronto. Eventually it came to Toronto, I think, the Cup final. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember. It was one or the other. I can't remember.
I can't remember either how it went, but the funny part is I think we lost out, and so did somebody else, and now we're all having beers. I think we lost to Tampa, and somebody else lost out at the same time, the same night. And now we're all having beers and drinking with this the other team. Usually you're in this big area, I think we're so excited to get the hell out of the bubble by the time it kind of hit. Your year is over, but you're just get me home. I don't even care at this point. I'm done. So once you've lost out, it was just I just remember that being so weird. You're kind of partying with the other team, and the other guys are going back to their room because they got to get ready for round 2 or round 3 or whatever it was.
Well, so when you look back 25 years from now, what will be your lasting memory of playing for the Leafs?
God, I
was telling Hayes how jarring it was to play in those buildings. There was just no one there. There was no atmosphere. It was
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I still enjoy. I really did love being a Leaf, and I just it irks me that our team didn't accomplish what, we're up 3-1. I think just the disappointment of that was just so hard to overcome. Even for me in Boston this year, it's just insane that we didn't move on. But I really did enjoy it. I just, I guess the thing that I'll remember the most is just the first time you put on the jersey or walk in the room and you realize that's your jersey hanging there. And, for me, it was a lot of emotion of just my father wearing the same number and same team. So that's something I'll remember, and I'm proud that, I know it didn't go as planned, but, there was still some good hockey before I got hurt. I always laugh at, what a waste of a pick, but no one was complaining before I got hurt. So it was one of those kind of situations. And, I'm still proud of my time, and obviously I gave everything I could with the injury I had, and just wasn't in the cards, man. It was too bad. It's just that's sports, and I still look back, though, and it was a good experience for me to go through that, I guess, in a way, too.
We're chatting with Nick Foligno. Are you trying to knock off every team in the original 6 here, or what's the plan?
I got asked that, too. That's pretty funny. I'm like, yeah, I didn't even think of it that way. Might as well go for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's
how'd you land in Chicago?
Yeah, I am. I'm looking forward to it. I think after Toronto and just knowing it wasn't going to work there with, trying to re-sign and getting the opportunity to go to Boston, I got really excited about working with Patrice and the guys there. And, I really did feel like that team was just always in the mix to win. And I couldn't have predicted the year that we had this year, where it was a historic year, best ever regular season team. And, no one would have picked us to be out in the first round. And I think it just goes to show you how hard it is to win and the role you have to get on. And so that one, again, will eat at you just because of the promise that we had as a group. And I mean, we were for real. I don't think there was a deeper team in recent memory than us. You can even go back to the team that we beat against when we played Tampa as Columbus Blue Jackets, and they didn't even have the depth that we had this year, and we were just built a lot differently. And, that one it baffles me to this day why we didn't move on. But, I'm looking now, though, at this opportunity in Chicago as a way of using everything I've learned and the motivation I have of the disappointment that happened and trying to put it into this team and help, learn from some of the mistakes I've made, but also help these guys and teaching them what it is to be a pro and how to play the right way and the culture and the structure that we need to have, the standard that you need to have to win. And I think I learned a lot of those lessons along the way, especially in Boston this past year. And some great players I got to play with. So I'm really, re-energized in a way to first of all show people I'm healthy. I've got now 2 summers of health under my belt, which I'm really excited about. So I feel like a different person too, and I'm looking forward to putting that in the next season.
With Nick Foligno, and obviously you're not alone coming in there as a veteran. You're joined by Corey Perry. Right after you sign, they acquire Perry. Perry ends up signing there, and obviously everyone knows who's coming. And that's Connor Bedard. Now, I'm curious, I'm sure they don't have to ask you any of this. I'm sure you're well aware of what the team will expect out of yourself and Corey in terms of veteran leadership. But, how do you approach the Connor Bedard situation in terms of being a mentor, in terms of being a veteran? How important is that role for you to play this year?
Well, I'm excited because, I look back on when I first came into the league, and I was so fortunate to have some really incredible veteran guys in the room with me in Ottawa. I got to play with a Luke Richardson, a Daniel Alfredson, a Wade Redden, Mike Fisher. I mean, there's a young Jason Spezza and Danny Heatley, and Chris Phillips. I mean, and honestly, the names that of people and people I respect and leaders that they were as players and people, I was really fortunate. And, I got to soak in a lot of what it meant to be a pro. I got to soak in what it meant to be an off-ice pro, the charity work that these guys did, the understanding of how to, integrate into a community. I learned all that at 19 years old. So I hope to be that for Connor. I hope to, not just myself. I'm sure Corey's the same way. He probably felt very, lucky to go into a room that he went to in Anaheim. And there's a lot of guys in that team that we can all help. And that's what you try to do, right? It's not just him either. There's a lot of other young players. I think that obviously everyone's excited about this young player, but there's, another kid in Reichel and a few more that are learning how to be pros, and they're great players. And so it's exciting when you get that opportunity and you're tasked with that. When somebody has enough respect for the way you are as a player and a person to have you be the one that leads the way, I think you take that as a really humbling responsibility and try and do your best and use everything that I've learned in order to help him and make him understand, listen, you have to be you. That's what makes you great. But these are little things that are going to help you along the way achieve even more success, hopefully, and become that player that plays for 20 years and has an impact. And, I'm really excited about doing that with some of the guys they brought in, especially Corey, even Taylor Hall and his experience of being a first overall pick. And then you got Seth Jones, who I just absolutely love as a person and player that I get to work with again. And I'm excited to see him take another step too and help him. And I know it was disappointing last year the way things went. So he's looking for a fun and, a year where we get back on track. And I think we're all, looking in that regard to, help Connor and our whole team do that.
What does that leadership look like? Like, do you remember like a moment or a story from like early in your career where, I don't know, one of those guys, whether it was Alfredson, Chris Neal, whoever it was, I don't know, like shaped you into becoming kind of the pro that you eventually became?
Man, it's hard to say. I think just being around them and what I learned was just the preparation and the consistency at which they played. That was what I always learned. Like, if you're going to have your fun, okay, you showed up ready to work the next day, and understanding the highs and lows of a season. Like, they never really got too excited about something, and they never really got too down. And especially in a market like Canadian market, I mean, that was probably the best lesson I could learn. And here you are coming now to an original six team, and for Connor and all these young guys, where the expectation is always to win. There's a brand and a history of winning in these organizations. So, I think that's what I remember most is just watching these guys at their craft and always being in awe and learning how to, okay, every night, every time I step on the ice, every time for practice, it matters. In the gym, their habits in the gym, their habits off the ice and eating. It was amazing to me how I just soaked all that in, and I think it really helped me obviously have the career that I've had and play as long as I have.
Well, we wish you nothing but success in Chicago, Nick. It's going to be a really cool year for you guys down there, and obviously you've had a great run, and we really appreciate you finding time for us. We always love having you on. Thank you for this.
Appreciate it, guys. Enjoy the summer. Thanks a lot.
You got it. You too. There he is, Nick Foligno of the Chicago Blackhawks. And it's interesting what he says there about all those veterans and how lucky he was to be surrounded by them. Meanwhile, his dad played over 1,000 games in the NHL. So it speaks to why he's had the career he's had. His brother Marcus has had the career he's had. Like, Nick's now played over 1,000 games.
Yeah, almost 1,100. I just looked.
Yeah. Like, that's a great run, man. Like, it's to be able to rely on both sides. And that's why, listen, he's making a lot of money. They're paying him $4 million. They're paying Corey Perry $4 million. They got to hit the floor in Chicago. But this is another year of development. It's another year of taking a step. And now the big guy's there. Like, Connor Bedard has arrived. It is his team. It is his market. Kane's not there anymore. Taves not there anymore. They have officially turned the page.
Kind of funny how it worked out, eh?
Mm-hmm.
That those guys leave, their contracts are up, and then this new guy comes
Here he comes. And
looks like they still need a goalie, though, Hayes, by the way.
You think Matt Murray could be an option there?
That would be too weird, wouldn't it? Murray and Mrazek?
That would be strange.
Wouldn't it?
That would be strange. Although, is Mrazek expected to even play? He got 1 year left on his deal. I guess why not?
Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there'll be growing pains there. I would guess Nick and Corey, they may be options to be dealt at the trade deadline. You know, if I wouldn't be shocked if Chicago's told them that. You guys show up, do what you're supposed to do, be pros, play well. If you're healthy, we'll eat 50% and flip you somewhere at the deadline. But there is a lot of benefit to that. If you're Bedard, I think you're ecstatic that Nick Foligno's in that room, that Corey Perry's in that room.
Taylor
Hall's in like veteran guys who've been around.
Yeah.
You know.
Nikita Zaitsev on that team. I totally
Nikita
forgot
Zaitsev.
That. Wow.
That's how bad Chicago's been, that they have been a dumpster for bad contracts.
Yeah.
Because something's got to give with Murray. Like, that is going to happen at some point. They're either going to buy him out or they got to find a taker for him. But he's making a lot of cash. Like, forget the cap hit. The money is like $8 million.
Yeah. I think Ottawa's eating 2.
Sure. So you're still looking at $6
million. Like,
that's why everyone's like, send him to Arizona. Arizona, that's not the way it works. Arizona pays $750 cash.
Right.
And takes a $5 million cap hit.
Right.
They don't take a $4 million cap hit and pay $6 million cash.
That's part of the problem, right?
Yes. That's why, I don't know, they might have to buy him out. Yeah. And if they do, what do the numbers look like on that?
So it's like just under $700K in year 1, and then it's $2 million in year 2.
Mm-hmm.
$2 million in year 2 is not great. That's when the cap will go up.
Right.
So like part of the cap rising would just go to that. But I don't know. What are you going to do?
You can't have him on the roster. Like, if you're going to sign Samsonov, Joseph Woll has to be placed on waivers. You're not going to have a situation like that again.
I want to talk about their goaltending at a certain point. I think we should get into that.
Okay. Let's come back. We can get into that. We got role play level of concern coming up. Steve Phillips will join us. We've got our picks for the John Deere, the U.S. Women's Open, as well at Pebble. We got a couple picks for that. Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel, still to come. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.
You can never ask me to stop drinking. Do you understand?
I do. I really do.
One bourbon, one scotch, one beer.
All right, role play level of concern. One of our favorites, Jonas. I'm sure you've played it before. Not overly complicated, right? We go around the table here. We're each assigned a person, a place, a thing, a situation. And then we have to express our level of concern based on that situation and the context. And a pint on the patio means no concern whatsoever. Maybe a 6-pack and a shot, that's mediocre concern. High levels of mediocre concern would be Marty Wildwood. Do you want to hear Marty?
6 Busch Light, 6 Bud Light, and I love them, tall boys.
So that's like a fair amount of concern. And then, of course, it's Nick Cage. That's nuclear levels of concern. All right? Jonas, we'll begin with you. You're playing the role of Shohei Ohtani, right? Who's an MVP winner in the past and is a massive favorite to win it this year. What is your level of concern, though, with the pitching possibly going on hiatus, that could affect your MVP chances?
I think I'm a pine on the patio kind of person right now.
Mm-hmm.
I just look around at all my competitors and I say, who is going to take the MVP from me? Who is it?
Yeah.
The best team in the American League is Tampa.
Right.
Their best player, Wander Franco, didn't initially even make the All-Star team.
Mm-hmm.
He was just named.
Mm-hmm.
Who is it? Is it, I mean, like, I look around and I'm just like, is it Jose Ramirez?
It was going to be Judge until he got hurt, who was going to possibly compete. But as of right now, I hear what you're saying in the American League. Is Bo Bichette a possibility?
Right.
Is Bo a guy that could get a little bit of love?
I don't like who's even finishing in the runner-up.
It's a great question. Randy Arozarena, like you mentioned. I mean, you look at the statistics, it's a lot of names atop the board that are not like household guys, right? It's not Altuve. It's not Judge.
No. It's not Vladdy.
You know, Bichette's having a great year, clearly. He's hitting for average, a little bit of pop. You know, Devers is having a good year again, but Boston, Shohei's way ahead of him in terms of the statistics. So I think I'm with you. I think it is a pint on the patio in terms of the American League MVP. He's got 31 home runs. He got 68 RBI. I mean, the guy's stats are off the charts. And even if he puts it on hiatus for a little bit in terms of pitching, like Corey Seager's a guy that until he got injured.
He's batting like 350.
Seager's been outstanding. And Texas has been a great story.
But he's not going to
but I don't think he's going to play enough right over the course of the year to really, truly be in contention. So,
like, pretend you didn't know Ohtani was also a pitcher and you just saw his hitting stats. You'd be like, yeah, that's MVP.
That's probably enough.
Cool.
And in baseball, it's been proven in the past, it doesn't matter if your team wins or loses.
No.
Like, it's irrelevant, and they're going to lose. They're not going to make the playoffs, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think the pitching puts it so far out of reach from everyone else.
Kind of unfair.
It really is. Because, like, if this guy is on pace to hit 60-plus home runs, potentially hit 60 home runs. If he hits 60 home runs and has an ERA in the low threes, it's obviously a unanimous vote, or it should be.
It would be like if someone in the NFL was like the best quarterback and then also was like the best cornerback.
Yeah. Yeah. It is Connor McDavid, and then every other night he's a backup goalie that is above average, well above average.
Yeah.
Like, has kind of Vezina stuff.
Like, I don't remember. How good was Bo Jackson at, like, that was two sports. That's not the right one. I guess Deion Sanders? No,
yeah,
that's
but
also not the same.
no one's done this.
No one's done
Like, no one in 100 years.
Babe
like,
Ruth.
there have been guys, back in the day that would have to pitch and hit, and well before the DH, but no one's done this. I guess there would have been football players that played on both sides of the ball, but I can't give you a guy that was a great running back and a great linebacker. There would have been examples of that, but again, 70 years ago. There's nothing like it. There is nothing like Shohei Ohtani. All right, I am playing the role of Masai Ujiri. What is my level of concern that my legacy is starting to fade with some of the recent miscues. Shockingly, I'm not a pine on the patio. I'm not a pine on the patio, and I have to admit, I never thought it would get to a point where it would be anything but a pine on the patio. But I'm not much beyond that. I'm a few pints, maybe a shot or two, because I understand, fans are fickle. Sports, it's always about what are you going to do next as opposed to what have you done in the past. But you can never take away the fact that I, Masai Ujiri, brought a championship to this team. And as a result, my personality and my bravado and the, at times, ego permeates the group. And as a result, I think it has been incredibly successful. And I, Masai Ujiri, are as synonymous with this team as any other player, any other coach in team history. And I don't think that's going to change, even though I screwed up the Fred VanVleet situation, even though I should have sold at the deadline as opposed to been a buyer. But it's not a pine on the patio anymore because Nick Nurse is gone, Kawhi's long gone, Fred's gone, Siakam could be the next one out the door. There's been a lot of turnover here. Team's not that good. People are starting to wonder, what is Masai thinking?
I think you should be a little more concerned. This feels like the first time where they don't feel like they have a clear direction. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't feel like they know what their clear direction is. Like trading a first-round pick for Pirtle, when you're kind of not really, like, what was the point? Like, just sign him in free agency, right?
And then it's like you have to sign him, and you give him a fourth year,
right?
And possibly overpay him. And now there are reports, like legitimate reports, maybe Siakam's going to go. And the belief was you got Pirtle for Siakam. Like, you got Pirtle to fit Siakam into a proper role in the rotation.
He also fit really nicely with who? VanVleet.
Fred VanVleet with the high pick and roll.
Yeah, he's gone.
And now he's gone.
So it's like, I don't totally understand where they're going.
I'm not sure they do either.
Yeah, they're like, there's a clear next move.
No, I'm not sure they do either. Now, you can flip Pirtle probably at some point, and I think they feel comfortable in that.
Right.
But
I mean, you need players, right?
That's the thing. You got to fill out a roster. You have a floor here. But I look at this roster like right now, and I don't know, do they win 42 games? 43 games? Like, they're not going to be awful, but it's tough to see them being great. They still can't shoot. I don't care that Grady Dick is here. He's a rookie. They still can't shoot. And their backcourt is still weak. I don't know.
They don't have a point guard.
And they got a rookie coach. Like, I don't know what he's going to be. It could be great. The last time it worked out really well, clearly, with Nick Nurse.
Yeah.
But we don't really know.
At least he's a rookie coach for a team that's not contending, right?
Right. But you're throwing him into the fire. He's been preparing for this his whole life. Obviously they picked him because they believe he can do the job, but until you really see it, you don't know. All right, Jonas, you're playing the role of Juan Soto.
The greatest hitter I've ever seen.
The greatest hitter those eyes have ever seen. I believe at one point you said you would take him over prime Barry Bonds. which is still.
I think, did I say that?
I may be making that
No,
up.
I think that's probably.
I think you probably said that.
he was that amazing.
He was
like,
not ever as good as prime Barry Bonds.
as far as like career trajectory, he for sure was. Like
No,
if
he
you
wasn't.
looked at his numbers, no, you're wrong. If you looked at his numbers when he was like 22,
yes.
it was basically like Mantle and like it was like 3 people ever.
He was absolutely unbelievable the first 2 or 3 years in the league. And what he did for that World Series team. But prime Barry Bonds, no one is tracking towards prime Barry Bonds because we'll
Prime
never
Barry
see it
Bonds
again.
was cheating.
Fine, but it still happened though. You're right. I mean, I'm not disputing that, but these eyes saw him hit 70-plus bombs.
Guys did too.
And these eyes saw him get intentionally walked when the bases were loaded.
You know, I went and saw him in Dodger Stadium one time, and they walked him 4 times,
Yeah.
and his only at bat was a double.
Insanity.
It's like, this is
That's why. Exactly. They finally pitched him. They're like, screw it, man. What are we doing here? Walk this guy. All right, you're playing the role of Juan Soto. What is your level of concern? You'll never make as much money as Washington was willing to pay you.
So was that like 440, 10 years?
It was a long-term deferred money type deal. But the bold number is $440 million on the contract.
I think it's a 6-pack. I'm still not super worried.
But there's a little bit of concern.
A little bit of concern because I'm not having the best year.
Right.
It really hasn't gone great for me since I got to San Diego. Like,
No,
it's been
it hasn't.
okay.
What's your problem out there?
I don't know. Like, I guess I just don't like the warm weather. Maybe this Tatis guy is outshining me.
Yeah, that's concerning.
I'm concerned. But he's still good. Like, when I get to market, someone's still going to give me 400 mil. Min. Right?
Are they?
Yeah. He's
Really?
having a crappy year, and he still has like
He
an
was-
OPS of like, I think it's like 930 or something.
Listen, he's going to figure it out. And if he's got an OPS of 930, that's still an elite player.
Yes.
And he's in his mid-20s.
It's a little like Austin Matthews last year. It's like, well, he had an off year.
Yeah.
Well, he's still got 40 goals and 80.
You're probably right. He's still going to make a fortune. Like, it's not like someone's going to shortchange him. But is it 350 now?
No.
Is it 370?
Who's his agent? Do you remember?
Is it
Scotty
the
Boras.
big man? It's Boris.
I believe so, yeah.
Well, then Boris has made a promise.
Yeah.
Boris has probably promised him $500 million. Like, I'll find you 500. It sounds like that's what he did with Bryce Harper.
How does that work? Because like circumstances can change, and that cannot be the case. You know what I mean?
Well, you got to think Soto's been calling him off the hook, saying, "What the hell did I do here? I turned down $400 million because you told me that I was worth more and that I'd get more." And now Boris can hang up on him and say, "Dude, look what you
Hit
when
better."
you got to San Diego, you were terrible. He was a black hole in San Diego when he got there."
But maybe the players just take the money and then try to force your way out, just like in the NBA.
That, I think, in retrospect, you look back on it, you're going to turn down $400 million.
Yeah.
Really? You're going to gamble on maybe making $100 million more when you've already got 400 in the
Do you know
bank?
who did that? New Raptor Dennis Schroeder. I think he was offered
Yes.
like $80 million from the Lakers.
Huge
turned
money.
it down, and then I think he got like $4 million in free agency.
Yeah, went to Boston, didn't he? And he got like nothing. Yes, you're right.
Take the money.
When in doubt, take the money. Cody Franzen, when in doubt,
Take the money.
take the money. All right, I'm playing the role of Ross Atkins, GM of the Blue Jays. What is my level of concern that if Alek Manoah blows up again, it's all on you? Play it.
You can never, ever ask me to stop drinking.
Yeah, this is the big man that makes the call. Ross Atkins makes the call. Now, Mark Shapiro probably had a voice in that, but I can tell you who didn't. John Schneider, Pete Walker, Alek Manoah certainly can't make that call. Alek Manoah's agent can't make that call. The general manager of the team makes the decisions. He made the decision to send him down. He made the decision to bring him up after 2 starts in the minors, one of which was a catastrophe. This one's on Atkins. As the majority of it's on Manoah. It's still on the athlete to go out there and perform. Alek Manoah has put himself in this position, but there are times when you have to manage a player, manage an asset, and you got to protect that asset. And I'm not convinced they're doing that here. This feels incredibly rushed. Now, that's based on our timeline. The Jays never gave a timeline. They never said anything about what this guy's going to do.
Do you think that they send him down to, what's the level called? Rookie?
The Florida Complex League.
Do you think they said, we're just going to send him down there for 2 starts? I have a hard time
I
believing
doubt it,
that
but
was
then
the
what
plan.
changed? There's no way a start in New Hampshire made them all of a sudden flip a switch. Maybe what changed was the fact that they're concerned that at some point there's going to be injuries in the rotation. They're getting close to the trade deadline, and they got to make a call on if they need another starting pitcher. And when they made the call to bring him up, they were 45-40 and chasing a wild card spot.
That seems like it.
That speaks to desperation. That speaks to possibly mismanagement. And that's why I think Ross Atkins has got to be very concerned here. That maybe Manoah comes back and it all works. He has done it before.
Yeah.
He's done it many times before early in his career. I think it'd be the coolest story one of the cooler stories in Toronto sports history if he does it.
Halliday-esque?
But more rapid. Halliday was gone. And Halliday was a mess when he first came up.
Yeah.
Right? And then was gone and had to reload and completely came back. Manoah was a legit stud for a year and a half. Like, what did he give him? 45 starts where, like, this guy was a legit, stud or close to it. This would be one of the coolest stories, and I hope it happens for his sake. But for me, it's on Ross Atkins.
Well, what do you do? Like, all the best to him, but what do you do if he has a first start isn't good?
That's what I don't think you can send him right back down.
Can't.
Like, if you're calling him back up, you've got to commit to giving him 3 or 4 starts where he's going to try to prove that he's worked through whatever he had to work through.
And then if those don't go well, that's it for the year, isn't it?
I would assume so. Maybe he goes down for 4 starts in the Florida Complex League. Comes back in September. But I think the GM's got to wear a lot of this. And conversely, if it goes really well, he can puff his chest out, deservedly so, and say, I knew it. I saw things you didn't see. And we were more than comfortable with it coming up. And we were more than comfortable that Alec could return to form, and it's all good. It's a real fork in the road. I don't think there's a gray area, right, where it's like, okay, I can live with that decision. It's either great call and you put your neck out and this guy repaid you, or what the hell were you thinking, and now the guy's a mess, and what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
Seems like 2 options. Jonas, you're playing the role of Alex DeBrincat. Alex DeBrincat, former 40-goal scorer of the Ottawa Senators, reportedly wants out. But July 5th, nothing has come of it yet. What is your level of concern? You're going to have to start the year in Ottawa.
I think it's another 6-pack.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's likely. Do you?
I don't know. It seems like there's only a couple teams really kicking tires.
But don't they have to trade him?
Do they?
I kind of think they do. I mean, he doesn't have a contract.
They just picked, but he's an RFA. He's not going anywhere. It'll be a 1-year deal. That's not ideal.
I don't think that.
I would be looking to flip him. I think they want to flip him. But it's like what's going on in Winnipeg and in Calgary. At some point, you got to put your stake in the ground and say, we're going to work on our own timeline here. And if we have to trade you at the deadline, we'll trade you at the deadline if it's a better deal.
I guess I just don't have a lot of faith in what they're doing over there, would be my big concern.
In Ottawa?
Yes.
I can't argue with you there.
You thought it was a good idea to give Korpisalo 5 years?
I think they needed a goalie desperately.
So just sign anyone for 5 years?
Well, he's not anyone. Like, he's a good goalie.
Anyone. He is journeyman.
He's a good goalie. When he plays,
he had 1 good year.
When he plays up to his capability,
yeah, that's just like everyone.
He's a starter. I think he's a starter. You don't think he's one of the?
He's never been a starter.
You don't think he's one of the best 32 goalies in the league?
No, he's been a tandem guy his entire career. Anyway, that's a side story.
He wasn't in LA when he got to LA.
Yeah, that was like half
Although
a year.
I guess that's because there were injuries and Okay, but
I'm
with
a
you.
little worried.
Listen, I don't love a 5-year deal. I'm not disputing that, but they needed a goalie, and they went out and acquired one, and they didn't pay assets to get him. So if it was a 2 or 3 year deal, fine.
Just cap space.
But they got a young guy. They have young goalies there too. I think they feel pretty good about growing at some point. Although I wonder about a 5-year deal with the next wave possibly coming.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not arguing. I'm not saying that they're the pillar of success in Ottawa.
They're not.
So you're not that concerned, though. Still, that if you're DeBrincat,
I mean, it's only July. What is this? July 5th?
Yeah. No. Eventually, he'll get out.
Yeah.
That sucks for them, though. Like Ottawa, they acquire him, they pay a price for him. He comes in, he has 1 year where he wasn't great, and then I'm out.
But that was the risk in the trade.
I understand. But at some point, you got to take a swing.
Oh, yeah. That's also true.
Like you do, though. Like, especially these Canadian teams, smaller market teams.
That's one of the things, like, to bring it, we don't need to talk about the Leafs, but it sometimes feels like it's a little bit of like a failure of an imagination with that core stuff. Like, is there no trade you can come up with that actually changes your team, makes you different, if not better? I don't know.
I'm sure there is, but that is the problem with it. You get asked that all the time. Well, where are you going to trade him? I don't know. I don't know what's available.
Right.
Like I could make up something that would make sense, but that doesn't mean it can happen.
Right. So no time there's been a trade that makes sense. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what ends up happening the other way, though, is, well, you can't trade him because you can't give me an example of what's available, which is also ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right. Which comes up a lot with Nylander and with Marner. I think Matthews and Tavares are different because of their situation. Matthews, they're going to keep. Tavares has got a full no move. But when talking about Mitch Marner in a trade, I don't know what's out there. But does that mean you shouldn't explore it? Does that mean you can't find it? Maybe you can't.
Trades happen all the time.
But maybe you can. Exactly.
Well, actually, that's not true. They happen some of the time.
Maybe you can. And listen, it's different if they just don't want to. And it seems like they just don't want to. But that's where, like, debates always come to an end. Well, you can't trade him because you won't get anything back. And then you say, well, how do you know? And then they respond, well, how do you know? You're like, you're right, I don't. I don't have an answer on what they'd actually get back. So you're going to go with they'll get nothing. I'll go with they'll get something. But ultimately, it doesn't mean anything because you're not in the room. There you go, Jonas. Role play level of concern. Good stuff.
Good. Let's talk about the goaltending.
All right, we'll come back. You've got something going on here with the Maple Leaf goaltending. All right, we'll get to that. Steve Phillips will join us in about 20 minutes on the Jays tonight. Clutch hitting last night. Bassett looked good. Barrios on the mound, and Alec Manoah returns on Friday. We'll get to that and much more with Steve. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Steve Phillips in about 15 minutes. We've got our PGA picks brought to you by TaylorMade, the John Deere, U.S. Open as well down at Pebble. Brooke Henderson in fine form. I'm liking Brooke this week. I'm liking Brooke a lot this week. Primetime golf, too, out in Pebble Beach. I love it. Winner will be crowned at like 10 o'clock Eastern time, give or take. Probably a little bit earlier on Sunday because they'll want it closer to prime time, but 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock would be great. West Coast golf, best. All right, Jonas, what do you got for us here with the Leafs goaltending situation?
So it's timely a little bit because Ilya Samsonov just elected for arbitration, which isn't surprising. But remember all the talk we had last summer about the goaltending? We were like, Matt Murray, Ilya Samsonov, like, what are they going to get in their goaltending? And there's been a lot of stuff going on this summer, so I get it. But it doesn't feel like there's been enough talk about whether Samsonov and Joe Woll, or however it shakes out, is any better. I would argue it's probably worse in theory.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that you can count on Samsonov having the same type of year that he had last year. I don't know what evidence there is for that. He had one good year.
Mm-hmm.
He's never started more than 40 games in a season. Joe Woll has played, I think, 13 NHL games. I just think I've started to think about this more. I'm like, wait a second. Have I been skipped over this?
Yeah. It's almost like, are we in Toronto right now? Shouldn't this be a topic of discussion?
This should be a topic of discussion.
I think it speaks to how much oxygen goes into the core players all the time in this market. The fact that well-known names came in, like when Reeves came in, Bertuzzi and Domi came in, like that, those are attractive names. You can have a different opinion on if you like the signings, if you think they're going to fit or whatever, but everyone knows those names.
Yeah.
So that's going to be somewhat of a distraction.
They also had a very noisy start to their offseason.
Right. Dubas out, Trey living in. Is Keefe going to stick around?
A lot of stuff.
But I think you're speaking to something that when the dust settles, people are going to look around and probably be saying the exact same thing you just said.
Yeah, I think.
Wait a minute here.
I'm going to write about this.
What are we doing?
Like, wait a second.
Yeah. Like the Joseph Woll story I find very compelling. And I think it has the chance to be a really cool, unique, original story because it's been 30 years since they drafted, developed, and really allowed a goalie to take off.
You're not counting Rime time?
Not going to count James Reimer.
You have to count.
I guess you can. He was the third round. Yeah, okay, fine. James Reimer counts. But Reimer was on a team that was terrible.
Yeah.
You know, Potvin came up on a team that was great.
Yeah.
Or had the abilities to be very good. Joseph Woll is not going to step up and play the role of Potvin, I don't think. Like, I don't think he's going to take over the number one role.
Even that you're putting him in that conversation feels so premature to me. He's barely played.
Yeah,
he might be all these things, but I feel like there's been like this very quick rush to judgment about what he is, and I just don't.
I think part of it is that he's waiver exempt now, so the fear is you're going to lose him. So as a result, he's made the team already.
In theory,
right? Like that's kind of what it feels like. He's already made the team, and Samsonov, they're just going to run it back with him, and they're going to find a way to get rid of Murray. Like, I understand what you're saying. It's not an overly confident position or overly confident depth chart. And if the team's going to take a bit of a step back defensively, which I'm not sure they necessarily will, but they very well could.
They've got worse defensive players.
Yes, and they let out the door, you know, although Justin Hall, Luke Shen was here for a portion of time. Kerfoot was okay defensively.
Good defensively. Achari's good defensively. O'Reilly is not what he once
was. That's post-deadline, though.
Yeah, what they finished off to what they are now.
Yeah.
They're probably a bit worse.
Probably worse defensively, yep.
I don't know.
I'll grant you that. Like, there likely is more pressure on the goalies. They have to steal some games.
What did
be better.
Samsonov had 919 save percentage. I'm gonna bet it's not gonna be 919.
Right.
Would think it'll.
Now they're
lower.
banking on it not falling off a cliff, right? Because he's still a young guy.
Sure.
Like he should be stepping into his prime.
He might win a
years.
Vezina. I have no idea.
Seems unlikely, but yeah, I think
What's
you're on.
Joe Woll going to be able to do in 30 starts, 35 starts? I don't know.
We have no idea.
Started 7 games last year.
Yep. Has that injury issues? Yeah. It's a position that at some point will get its due.
Yeah.
At some point, this market will turn their eyes to it and say, "Wait a minute here. What are we thinking on this?" And maybe you just started that conversation.
There we go.
There you go, Jonas. Final hour coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050, soon to be up on TSN 2.